Welcome back on the AM show. Time now for us to dig into the newspapers. We're joined by Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleimana Brima. But before I bring in Mr. Brima, let's just let you know, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is offering something fantabulous, okay? I think we could easily say it is an offer that is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That is just me being crazy in the morning. But anyway, it's a super duper offer they're making you, and you should be checking out your health. I don't know why, but in the last few days, I have been getting people talking more about prostate issues, prostate situations, not checking, and then what happened in the aftermath. You don't want to be caught pants down, literally, when it comes to prostate. So you have to get yourself checked. Now, if you're a woman, your fertility counts, especially if you are hoping to have children in the future, which is why you shouldn't take any of these for granted. Now, if you're concerned about any of these and you've not really been checking yourself, or if you've been checking but you've not done so recently, make tracks to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Here's where you can find them. Fortunately, they're all over the place. Here in Accra, they are at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, Kronum Abuehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's also Takrady Anaji State. That's where you can find them. Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanso and Esiama and Zema. You should give them a call. And these are the numbers you can do that on. 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. The end to chronic disease, but just the start of the news review. Mr. Brima, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me.
As the Bible will say, it rejoices my heart every time we get to discuss matters of national scope. Thank you so much for always making the time for us. We appreciate you. I'm sure Ghana appreciates you as well. Before we get into the papers, as I would always do, Green Ghana Day is coming up. It's just 3 days away, Green Ghana Day, where we're going to plant more trees. At what expense, we still do not know, and all of that. But good initiative. At the same time, put that side by side with what is happening with the Etiwa Forest. If you followed our news this morning, you would have seen the people there, Dr. Steve Manteau, our very own Aisha Ibrahim, Daryl Bosu of Arusha, Ghana, and other environmentalists saying we should leave it be, because already with all the pollution we've done to our water bodies and others on the back of Galamsey, if we touched that, it could be disastrous. There's also, since I've not been able to get your take yet on the Domelevo situation, I mean, I'm just throwing some ideas your way. Any quick thoughts you'd like us to percolate before we get into the papers?
Well, I think the Green Ghana Day is certainly a great initiative. We are at a time where climate crisis is a global crisis, and so every step that we will take as a country to contribute our quota to making our environment better and contributing to the efforts to deal with the ongoing global crisis is something that I think is worthwhile, and we need to all put our hands together and contribute towards the success of the Green Ghana Day. It may have challenges as usual, and as with any policy, but we need to focus on how to deal with the challenges rather than maybe make it something that would not work. And that, of course, ties into the issue around Etiwa Forest. And I fully endorse the advocacy by the individuals and groups who are saying that, look, at least let's just have this forest preserved as something that our grandchildren would grow up and see that when we say a forest, this is what it is. And we used to have as many of these, but they are all gone. Rather than, go into it, destroy it for purposes of extracting minerals. I don't know how much we would have to extract in terms of minerals to be able to make it as a country. I think we still have a lot to mine outside of these forest reserves. And I think that I fully endorse the effort to keep forests intact. On Dome level, I think that is a massive embarrassment for the president and his team, because at the time, those of us who were against it, we're made to feel that we don't know what we are talking about, to the point where when the man tried to challenge the earlier decision, the sanction was even increased, in terms of the number of days that he was supposed to be on leave. So for me, it's a colossal embarrassment for the president, for the steps that he took. But for all you know, they were also deliberate about it. They knew perhaps what they were doing was unconstitutional, but in order to protect certain people in government, they needed to sacrifice Domolevo in an unconstitutional way. For me, what is worrying is the questions that I asked yesterday somewhere, that so Domolevo has retired, the president's actions were unconstitutional, and is that the end? So the president, anytime the president conducts himself or makes an unconstitutional decision, if that decision has already impacted on some individuals, then the Supreme Court determines that, well, it was unconstitutional, but because the people have already suffered the consequences of the action, the president suffers no consequences. Is that what we are saying? I'm not a lawyer. You are a lawyer, and a first-class lawyer at that. You may be in a better position to educate all of us. But I don't think that we should
I am not a lawyer yet. I've not done my professional bit. But yes, I follow legal matters closely. And that was a bit of a curveball for those on the legal front. And that's why you saw CSOs, all of you banded together to kick against it. But the executive had its way. Maybe what we know for certain is that this may be some sort of, not just a test case now, because there's been a ruling on that situation, but something that other members of the executive, other presidents coming, would be able to look at and steer clear of such, decisions. And, interestingly, there was another situation under former President Mahama that people were using to equalize, and say that, well, there was something somewhat similar. And so if we also did something like this, it is nothing to cry foul about. And that is a problem for me. Equalization in our politics. When are we going to make any tracks? So it's quite a situation.
It really shows the fact that these people who are leading us as politicians are really not interested in the progress of our country. They are basically interested in self-centered issues, things that would inure to their own personal benefits. And it's usually a question of power, and power in order to grab money. And so as citizens, we need to continue to up our game. I think what has happened is really unfortunate. And it's also very unfortunate that the Supreme Court couldn't make a decision at the time that the matter was of relevance, and then had to only make this decision, which basically the usefulness of it is maybe future actions by presidents. But for me, the fact that the president has been deeply embarrassed by this decision of the Supreme Court, that is if he is for me quite significant, because it was an action meant to protect the interest of certain powerful people who had been found to have done wrong things, for which Domolevo was surcharging them and asking them to pay monies back to the state.
Interesting thoughts. When you said a question of power, what came to mind was Bessie Head. I think she's passed on. Bessie Head, the author, she has a book called A Question of Power. So when you used that phrase, it actually came to mind. But let's get into the newspapers. Later, if should I forget, I would want to run this by you. So the gender minister says, in terms of child begging on the streets, the mendicants we see, the menace can be eradicated if people stop giving alms. Later at the tail end, I'd like to take your thoughts on that. But the Daily Guide this morning, packed activities as Parliament resumes today. That story is on page 6. There's also Boga MP. Burger, but we pronounce it Boga. So Boga MP not qualified to contest. That's the Supreme Court. And then EC NPP rebut NDC Assin North by-election claims. And this bit, these two political stories, crucial ones, we have to get into them. And Kwapa Koko petitions the CJ. On the back page, Messi wants Barca return. Real eye Kane as Benzema replacement. Karim Benzema, of course, leaving the club after how many years now? Is it so many years? 14 plus? And some have suggested Victor Osimhen, the Nigerian who plays with Neapolitans, that is Napoli in Italy. And those are the stories there. But let me quickly get to page 3, where the meat of the matter is. So the Supreme Court has provided detailed reasons it directed Parliament to strike out the name of James Jachikwason from its record as member of the House representing the people of Assin North constituency in the Central Region. According to the Apex Court, Mr. Kwason did not meet the constitutional requirement for contesting the seat of Parliament, as he owed allegiance to another country at the time of picking up his nomination forms, contrary to Article 94(2)(a) of the 1992 Constitution. Quote, "We state without any equivocation that Article 94(2)(a) means that to be qualified to be a member of Parliament, a citizen of Ghana must not hold any other citizenship at the time when nominations are opened by the Electoral Commission for registration of candidates for election as members of Parliament," the court held in its interpretation of the constitutional article. Again, Mr. Kwason was booted out of Parliament last week by a 7-member panel of the Supreme Court, presided over by Justice Jones Doche and assisted by Justices Nene Amegacha, and there's a tall list. It was the opinion of the court that the EC allowing him to contest the election without showing evidence of renunciation of his Canadian citizenship was unconstitutional, which then means that moving forward, where such cases arise, people must have the evidence that they have renounced whichever other citizenship, and at the time of contesting, they must not owe allegiance to another country. That is the situation there. But let me tie in the other politics-related matters so you can digest both of them. EC NPP rebut NDC Assin North by-election claims. Now, the Electoral Commission has dismissed claims made by the NDC that the MPP is collaborating with the Commission for the purpose of transferring the vote of one Charles Opoku to the Assin North constituency to enable him contest the upcoming by-election in the said constituency. According to the Commission, the allegations are palpably false. The National Communications Officer of the NDC, Sami Jemfi, alleged in a statement that, quote, "This illegal move is to aid the said Charles Opoku to contest in the MPP parliamentary primaries to select a candidate for the upcoming Assin North by-election." Again, quote, our unimpeachable sources have revealed that contrary to the clear requirement on the nomination form for the Assin North by-election, which demands that a candidate in the election must be a registered voter in Assin North, the said Charles Opoku is not a registered voter in the Assin North constituency, he stated. However, this is the rebuttal from the Electoral Commission. They say, for the records, the EC has not received any such request from the MPP to transfer the votes of any person. This allegation is false and a figment of the author's imagination. As usual, it is aimed at maligning the integrity of the Electoral Commission. It says, per Article 94 of the 1992 Constitution, a person does not need to be a registered voter in a particular constituency to enable him or her to contest an election in that constituency. The MPP also issued a statement on this, and it was signed by Richard Ahiangba, the Director of Communications, who stated that it had no parliamentary candidate for Assin North and that the party was yet to hold parliamentary primaries or a primary in that constituency. Any reactions to these two stories?
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court's decision on Jachikwason, from all indications, I think it was quite clear. Even though people would say the provision that suggests that persons who owe allegiance in terms of citizenship of another country cannot contest in our elections or hold certain positions, people say that provision is quite problematic. I perhaps share that view. But as it stands now, I think the Jachikwason matter was quite straightforward, because all along the tradition has been that so long as you are a dual citizen, you wouldn't, or you are not eligible to contest for certain positions and to hold certain positions in our country. The NDC folks who have always defended it I haven't ever heard them say, look, the man had gone through the full process of renunciation and had acquired the certificate or the evidence to prove that he had renounced it. From all, the conversations and the debates, it was about the man having commenced a process and having indicated an intention to renounce his citizenship. And that for me wasn't enough to say the person has therefore renounced his citizenship. Until such a time that the process would have been completed, he remained a dual citizen. And so for me, it was quite a straightforward thing. And I don't know why it took this long for us to get this matter resolved. He certainly, I believe, at the time of filing, hadn't renounced his citizenship, even if the process of doing so had commenced. So for me, I would say that I side with the decision of the Supreme Court, and we look forward to the by-election that will happen in that constituency. And that then relates to the whole around somebody's vote being transferred and all. I think the decision to transfer one's vote is a personal decision. If I decide that I want to transfer my vote from the Adentan constituency to Ayawaso West Wogon, and I intend to do so within the parameters of the law, if a particular party is happy about it or not, that really is not their decision to make. It is my right to decide where I would want to transfer my vote to. And if the law permits it, I don't see why it is a problem. If the person that the NDC is complaining about has the right to decide that he wants to transfer his vote to a particular constituency,
right,
and after doing so, he is eligible to contest for a particular political party, so be it. He's a Ghanaian. So I wonder why there would be an issue about why somebody would want to transfer his or her vote to a particular constituency at a particular time. If the person is eligible and really has the higher chances of winning for the NPP and can do so within the law, I don't see why that should be a problem. So whether or not it is true, as the EC has rebutted it and the NPP has also indicated, whether or not that is true, I really don't see the big deal about it.
Let's get into some other stories as we move to other papers. Tidal waves wreak havoc at Shama, and residents of Anglo Beach in the Shama district of the Western region continue to bear the brunt of tidal waves, which have displaced hundreds of people and washed away many houses. Daily Guide gathered that the tidal waves became severe on Sunday after a heavy downpour, leaving many buildings and personal belongings destroyed. The residents have therefore called for urgent steps to be taken to bring some comfort to the affected persons. Suleimana, as you know, the usual, and we'll have the rhetoric and then we'll go back to situation normal, all messed up. But on the international front, Senegal's government suspends mobile internet access amid days of deadly clashes. Conflict may have cost Sudan $3.4 billion. I'm talking about that 7-week conflict in the country. Ghetto kids lose out in Britain's Got Talent final. Many people were rooting for them in the Britain's Got Talent final. They are kids from very impoverished backgrounds, aged between 6 and 13, and they were put together by the one who takes care of them and also the manager of the group, Dauda Kavuma. Unfortunately, they missed out on the top 3 slots for Britain's Got Talent, in which case they would have got some juicy packages. But just to wrap, I want us to look at the story. Nearly 80 schoolgirls poisoned in Afghanistan. And nearly 80 girls have been poisoned and hospitalized in 2 separate attacks at their primary schools in Afghanistan. An official has said it is thought to be the first time such an assault has happened since the Taliban seized power in August 2021 and began a crackdown on the freedoms of Afghan women and girls. Now, girls are banned from education beyond the 6th grade, including university, and women are barred from most jobs and public spaces. The education official said the person who orchestrated the poisoning had a personal grudge but did not elaborate. I usually delve into such stories because I'm very passionate about women's matters. I don't like being called a gender activist, but I am very passionate, whether it's reverse discrimination in education, there's a term for it that just escapes me, or taking taxes off pads so that our women can fare better, to whatever it is. So this struck me, and I found it a bit curious with the Taliban at post. I don't know whether you have any quick reactions before we get into the Finder newspaper.
Well, that's a very, very, very sad development. Of course, we know the philosophy of the Taliban and how devastating it can be. I think the way to go is not really to use the brute force that over the years has been applied. I think what will help is to leverage on building relationships, leverage on what the Arab world can do, what the Islamic world can do, and to continue to dialogue and bring the leadership of the Taliban up to speed with the issues of human rights, the issues of women empowerment, the issues of children's rights and all of that. It will be a long way to go, but we cannot but start. We have to start from somewhere. Over the years, I think a lot of efforts have been made to improve the situation in Afghanistan, but it remains quite challenging. We all have maybe a responsibility in terms of contributing our quota through diplomatic engagements, through all manner of advocacies that can be done through global platforms to help improve the situation in places like Afghanistan. And of course, as you mentioned, what is happening in Sudan is another sad development, this time on the African continent. And the AU and other institutions really have a role to play. This is the 60th year of the AU. And if you read the visionary statements of the founding fathers when they gathered in Addis Ababa in 1963, you would be sad that we are experiencing this on the continent of Africa. When, for example, Nkrumah and Haile Selassie talked about the need to have a joint African military force that can always intervene. If we did have that, we wouldn't have a situation where, military men and women in a single country divided on two fronts are destroying the country and the future of that great nation. I think the AU, as I've said, really has a lot of on that front. And then back into our own region in Senegal. Senegal has always been West Africa's champion in terms of democracy, in terms of peaceful processes. It's one of the countries that has never experienced coup d'etat before, even as we were doing back-to-back coup d'etats. It's quite sad that a country like that would today be going through what it is going through. As of yesterday, the information is that about 16 people have so far been killed as a result of the ongoing demonstrations. As an organization, my boss is a Senegalese. The board chairman of the Media Foundation is a great woman from Senegal, and she keeps updating us. And I think that all the updates that we are getting is really, really troubling. If the AU has something to do in Sudan, I believe that they certainly also have to intervene in the ongoing crisis in Senegal, but more importantly, our own regional bloc, the ECOWAS. I don't think that ECOWAS should keep, the diplomacy so soft that it get to a point where it will be difficult to redeem. We saw what happened in Guinea,
right?
And we sort of closed our eyes to it until the coup d'etat happened, and then suddenly we imposed sanctions and bans and all of that. I think we can be in the Senegalese situation before it gets out of hand.
Let's take a quick swipe at the Finder newspaper. Oforiatta adds Media General to 10 million Ghana cedi suit. There's Jinapo Ashua's Anglo Gold Ashanti Obuasi Mines of Protection. You remember those people who invaded some portion of the mine in recent times. Galamseyers, to put it that way. Anthrax outbreak. Authorities ban movement of all ruminants in parts of Upper East region. We do know that some cattle that had not been processed for eating had been consumed by some people. They had died and they were consumed by these people. Unfortunately, they contracted anthrax, which can be deadly. Move to sanitize forex market. Bank of Ghana to provide forex liquidity at prevailing market rates. That's according to the IMF. Two stories I want to look at, though. The Oforiatta one, and then Kenyan MP partners Kufuor Foundation to end period poverty. So Kenyan legislator Gloria Owoba is collaborating with the Kufuor Foundation to advocate and champion legislation to end period poverty among girls and women in Ghana. According to her, there is the need to institutionalize menstrual health advocacy, hence the need for a common platform for advocates championing the legislation. Owoba is the Kenyan senator who stood up against period shaming after she was asked to leave parliament because of of an apparent blood stain on her trousers. So I'm proud when these things happen, and I'm also glad that she's pushing, not just in her country, Kenya, but here in Ghana as well. But on the Oforiatta issue, the Minister of Finance has amended his lawsuit, including Media General to the suit. Now, what happened? He, in his amended statement of case filed on Monday, Oforiatta is demanding, among other things, a recovery of the sum of 10 million Ghana cedis as general damages, including aggravated and or exemplary damages for defamation for the libel uttered by a certain Captain Smart. So, quoting Captain Smart on the day on that edition, he says, "Are you aware that Ken Oforiatta has taken his 10% of the IMF money? Quote, every loan we take, he takes 10%. And it is on the back of this that he's being taken on. I think there was a conflation of different matters because, of course, he mentions 10% of the IMF, but there's also been that issue of Ken Oforiatta's data bank and the services they have rendered in our financial system and the benefits they have got from loans that we have contracted. So I don't know what the head and tail of this is, but I'll leave the courts to do their work. Your quick take?
Well, it's always a sad development for me when media organizations are sued. But of course, we do also have to admit that sometimes there are people who can be very, very reckless on media platforms. Because this matter is in court, I don't want to make particular references to it, but certainly there are times when you hear certain things being said on radio or on television, and you ask yourself, why would people, why would even management or editors allow these things to happen on air? But unfortunately, we are getting to a point where it appears, because in the name of politics, we are throwing the ethics and the professionalism that is required to the dogs. I'm not familiar with the current situation. I think the judges and the court would be the better place to decide this. But I would always urge that persons who feel offended by media actions perhaps should always endeavor to have the NMC as the first line of action. And when the NMC is unable to handle the matter in a satisfactory way, then they can always proceed to the courts. But be as it may be, this is an action that has already been taken, and we cannot comment on it. Otherwise, we find ourselves get ourselves into trouble in the area of contempt. So I leave it as it is, and we see how they deal with it.
We'll see how it pans out. Let's wrap the conversation with these stories. Economy Times, $3 billion ECF, that is Extended Credit Facility, not enough to solve dollar deficit. That's according to the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Assin. The governor has admitted that the recent approval of $3 billion in terms of that ECF by the International Monetary Fund would not resolve Ghana's dollar deficit. He said there was the need to strengthen the country's export base and also cut down drastically on imports, adding that this would reduce the pressure on the greenback and also make the country's fiat currency robust. I don't know about the greenback, reducing pressure rather on the greenback, which is the American dollar. I don't know about this portion of the story, but that's what it says. Then, banks' credit to the private sector has shrunk due to tight monetary policy stance portfolio rebalancing after the domestic debt exchange and moderation in economic activity. That is tied to some credit to private sector, which is shrinking. Let me see whether I'll add anything here. The business analyst says bilateral trade between Italy and Ghana in 2022 yielded 825 million euros, Italian ambassador reveals. Still under 1 billion euros, which for me I think is quite an issue because of certain things I know. But I remember speaking to the Swiss ambassador to Ghana, and I think for them it's in the billions of dollars, partly on the back of gold. Gold is one of our major exports to Switzerland. And then the Hawk newspaper, we don't see this often. Hackman hacked Allen's Edrumiso. That's the story there. Says it's an appeal for sympathy votes. And Haruna's audacious mission in Ashanti flags off 1.5 million votes for Mahama. Let's wrap on these stories, but don't forget what I wanted you to react to from Joy News on Facebook. The gender minister saying that if we want to end streetism, children on the streets begging, mendicants, then we should stop giving alms. Is that the solution? Quick thoughts, and it's a wrap.
Well, in terms of the issues with the city and the Bank of Ghana's governor's comment, sometimes I wonder why the people who have been put there to manage our affairs would be out there telling us what has to be done. That is why we put them there, to do what they think, what they are saying has to be done. So when you have a minister or the governor of the Bank of Ghana or the president telling us our problem is because we are too much import dependent and we have to do this, we have to do that. The problem that I have is, look, that is why we put you there, to do exactly what you are saying we should do. So you don't come and then preach to us what we need to do. You have the power to do that. The Bank of Ghana governor is put there to support the management of the economy and to contribute whatever he thinks is necessary to keep our city stable and to keep our reserves intact, working in collaboration and the Minister of Finance and all of that.
Right.
So his job is not to come and preach to us. He's not in the lecture room. You know, if that is what he wants, he should quit and go to the lecture room to tell students what should be done.
Right.
We put it, do the job, and he must do the job. Otherwise, I think he's better off quitting and letting somebody who can do the job to come in. Now, on the gender minister's comment.
So our time has elapsed. So just briefly on that, so we can run.
Absolutely. I don't think, really, that is the solution. I think it's a matter of she not having something to say. Otherwise, that's really not the solution. The solution is implementing policies that would ensure that the kids are empowered, their families are empowered.
Right.
Not urging people not to give arms.
Well, I concur with you on that. I mean, it could be part of the solution, but a very minuscule part of that solution. The state must live up to expectation. And the Constitution itself, in terms of protecting children and the state and its role, talks about that. We're failing these children. Whether they are from here or not, we have to protect them. But thank you so much, Suleiman Brahima, for joining us for another morning, another edition of the News Review. We wish you the best, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
He is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. As we go, I have to remind you, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is offering you, if you're a man, free prostate screening. If you're a woman, free fertility screening. Locate them in Accra Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. They are also in Kumasi, Kronoma, here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There is Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22. There's Techiman, Hansua, Esiama, in Nzema as well. Reach them on these numbers, 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease, bringing us to the end of the News Review and the start of sports. Up next, Tuesday.